Oh, I think that they're a massage.
Others that are like just like yeah, that sounds just like we're pretty direct
I was trying to figure out how to like work
Oh, okay. We must be share it. Doing that. I love everything. I love yeah, everything. I know.
Start the board meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will you accept the minutes from the last meeting? Move in second, accept the minutes for November 27 or December 4th.
Well, then we'll start first, and then we'll do December 4th next.
Okay, for December 27.
Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Move to accept the minutes from December 4th.
Moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Okay. With agreement of the board, I'd like to move the items from the consent agenda. Superintendent's report, further down to just before old business.
Aye.
Does everyone agree with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, then we'll move forward. We've accepted the minutes. Now point to pride.
So third grader Rylan Davis was honored at assembly last Friday by the interim police chief Scott Lester and fire chief Cal. He called 911 to help his father in a medical emergency one morning, which potentially saved his dad's life. So good job, Rylan. DCS's winter concert was held Friday, and families were entertained by skits, cones, and songs to celebrate the season. FES students learned about holidays around the world on Friday. 3 community members collaborated with teachers to help students learn about German, Mexican, England, and Danish holidays. Temple Elementary School last Friday had monthly visitors from 9 residents from Rivermead, and they partnered with Rivermead in a literacy mentoring program. Finally, SMS. Nope, not quite done yet. SMS, December 5th, Max Kale ran at the Junior Olympic Cross Country Championship in Reno, Nevada. Of 300 runners, Max placed 15th. So great job, Max. SMS had their annual holiday concert last Wednesday, and today 7th graders actually went to see a Christmas carol in Manchester. And just, we have a long list from CPHS, so bear with me for a minute. Last week, the Goethe Institute recognized ConVal High School as a Partner for the Future, or PAC school. This included during a celebration that had Vincent Weiss perform at ConVal High School as part of that school's designation. He put on a 2-hour concert. And just because you may or may not know who Vincent Weiss is, he is a chart-topping rock star in Deutschland right now. So it was a really big deal. I know that Dr. Forrest, to my right, very much enjoyed those 2 hours. Finally, we've got ConVal's Director of Choir, Crystal Ingram, and Instrumental Director Jim Wickham, and Technology Integrationist Specialist Elfried Reserve presented a workshop at the Crystal McCullough Technology Conference in Manchester. Their workshop demonstrated how several apps of the G Suite for education can be effectively integrated for instruction of large performing ensembles. I was just asked if we could take a couple seconds to just allow the people coming in from the hallway. So if you're out in the hallway and you're trying to find a seat, feel free to come on in. Crystal Morin, did I see Ingram? I apologize. This one? We have 2 students who have signed national letter of intent. One, Rachel Hurley, signed a national letter of intent to run cross-country for Lafayette College, which is a Division I school in Pennsylvania, starting this fall. And Evan Coyne also signed a letter of intent to run cross-country for Bryant College, a Division I school in Massachusetts, starting this fall. And those are our points of pride.
Thank you very much. Now is the time that we allow for public comment. We allow anyone to speak to the board for 2 minutes. And we're going to hold it to 2 minutes tonight because we've got a lot of things going on. So is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to the board?
You're gonna me?
Yep.
Okay.
Come on up.
My name's Tori Boyd. I'm from Dublin. And I just have a few things I'd like to say, which I wrote out for you. While you all have been so focused on closing our elementary schools or consolidation, it seems the main reason any of us are even here, the children of the 9 towns in this district, has been pushed to the back seat. Many of us sitting here are parents, while some of us are educators, and even some are people from the community. Our first thought should be about the children these extreme decisions are impacting. True figures and facts need to be presented to us, the voters, in order for a decision as important as what is currently being debated to be made. I would encourage you all to sit back and think what principles this district was founded on, and not forget that when going forward in your motions and warrant articles, the decisions and those implications that go with them are far-stretching and not to be taken lightly. None of us would be coming here out of the goodness of our hearts on a Tuesday evening, the week before holiday break, if we didn't feel strongly and compassionately about the education our children receive at our small elementary schools. These schools are producing our community's future, and they are doing an excellent job of it. You all are charged with a large task of continuing to produce exceptional individuals who will eventually be in your shoes. Please don't take that job lightly and think about all the ramifications of your decisions. My suggestion remains to have clear and concise information disseminated to the voters for an informed decision in voting time. Please give this issue the effort it deserves. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to speak on the issue regarding.
Excuse me, just please announce your name and where you're from.
My name is Elizabeth Swan, and I'm from Temple, and I'd like to speak on the issue regarding consolidation. One of the reasons I moved my family to a small town was to have the benefits of a small town education, of which there are many. Small schools are safer. There is a culture of connectedness. Learning is more equitably distributed in small schools. Small schools create more opportunities for participation, reducing social isolation. Small schools make space for uniqueness and the emergence of individual student voices. And trust is increased because relationships can be built between parents and teachers. And that's a foundation for good communication, something that I strive to teach my children. When I sat here the last time I was present for the board meeting, I noticed one of your guiding principles. How will we know if each student is learning each of the essential skills, concepts, and dispositions we have deemed essential? In my opinion, by paying them individual attention in safe places and in small classes, not by oversaturating one school and minimizing the potential for individualized attention. Regarding the surcharge proposition, this creates a divide within our communities. By asking people to pay more, you are also hindering new movers from coming to our area. And without small schools, towns will die. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Go ahead, come on up.
My name is Chris Matheson. I moved here from Nashua to raise my children in a small school after being in a large school. I'm looking at the fact of putting our elementary school children on a bus for like 50 minutes. My middle schooler is struggling to get up in the morning and getting on a bus and being on it for 50 minutes. How do we expect 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds? My 9-year-old can barely handle a 10-minute drive back from our house to TES, from school, sorry. It's a struggle because, again, I moved from a big town because I didn't want to raise my children in a class of 20. I wanted the benefit of a small town to give my children the best education. As an educator myself, that's important to me. I have to say with TES, my daughter has thrived. She hated writing. She has thrived through TES. Her name is being put in a book. For a kid who hates to write, her name is being published in a book that's going to go to Washington. Many of our students are going to be in that book. And I'm proud to say that I'm a TES parent, and I want to keep us open, and that's why I moved to such a small town. not to keep my kid in a large school. Having behavioral issues, and I think our children benefit from a small school. We have kids who have learning disabilities. They get the attention they need. I can call TES and say, hey, Kimberly, I'm working today. I don't have internet. Can you please do my pickup patrol? You can't do that in a big school because I work at other schools through the district. I don't have internet. So if I have to change my bus patrol, I can call and Kimberly's there to do that for me. You can't do that in a big school. It's a family. It's not a school. It's a family. And that's how I feel. I don't want to lose the small environment that my children have gained and loved so much to be thrown into a big school.
Anyone else?
My name is Erin Nolan, and I live in Peterborough, but I request every year for my children to attend Dublin Consolidated School. And I do that because I feel so strongly about the small schools. I understand the perspective and the issues the board faces. There are many people that are very frustrated with how much money goes to fund the schools. I completely understand that. But I don't think that even considering shuttering elementary schools should be on the table. I'm not sure if in this discussion you all could answer questions, but one of the things that I've learned about is at Wells Memorial School in Harrisville, they do an affordable tuition rate and have had success with that in drawing families from outside the district that they are in to their school. I don't know if this is something that's been looked at for our district. Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. But it would seem to me to encourage people to come to us rather than trying to inadvertently alienate them by closing what's important to them. I know it's not the only option, and I do agree that something needs to be done, but I just don't think that this is it. There are no firm facts that have been presented that show the cost savings to anyone in regards to this. I would definitely be open to seeing some figures if some could be generated in some way, but up until this point, there has been no information to that. So I just would like to say that I stand with the small schools, and while I understand the problem, closing the small schools is not the solution.
Anyone else? Come on in.
Hi, I'm Cindy Connolly from Temple, and I just want to state a few things that, we've recently formed a PTT program, and we've had many people come to our meetings and tell us that if the school closes, we're moving out of town. That's why we came here. And that's just concerning. It's horrible to think that we're going to lose valuable people in our community that work in volunteer for the fire departments, volunteer for these organizations in town, and we stand to lose these people because they came to town for the reason of the schools. They have little children, they like the idea of the community support that they get, and we're going to lose that. They're adamant. They're going to move. They have nothing else to keep them there if these schools close. I'm sure that all of these other towns are in the same boat that Temple is in, and that's very upsetting. The other fact that I want to point out is, where do we stand as a district? WMUR has been commenting almost every week about the funding in the state of New Hampshire and how inadequate it is. In 1997, the state was sued by Claremont and 4 other districts because they were not providing adequate funding. And 21 years later, here we are. There's another lawsuit going. We're not the only district that's fighting this. Why aren't we pushing back against the state of New Hampshire and joining forces to help solve this? It's not a short term, it's going to be a battle. But the state of New Hampshire needs to, they have an obligation to the residents of this state to adequately fund education, and they're not doing it. And they've pushed it off for 20 years when they were told they had to. So why are we joining forces, and are we looking at joining the bandwagon? There's lawsuits looking at being filed again because the state is not doing what they're supposed to do. Why aren't we joining that and taking the threat of closing these little town schools off of off of the voters, because it's going to ruin our town wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Anyone else? No one else? Oh, okay.
My name is Danny Boltzmeyer. I live in Temple. My husband and I chose to buy a home in Temple a year and a half ago. One of the main reasons why we chose Temple was its small elementary school, as well as the apparent importance of the arts in the whole ConVal school district. We have an elementary schooler and a middle schooler, SMS. We had no idea that the small elementary schools here were so undervalued by the district that TES could be at risk of being closed. I discovered personally just how instrumental a small school classroom can be in a young person's education, as well as their growth. When I transferred from a large university to a college with small classrooms, I always thought that I wanted to be in a large class so that I could be exposed to more ideas and information, but I found that it's so easy to get lost in a large classroom. The small classrooms that our children are in provide them with invaluable supports. They give them the opportunity to explore their own ideas, as well as the ideas that others have to offer, so much more fully and deeply than would have been possible in a larger classroom. This is the experience that I hope for all of our children here. We are responsible for not only the education of our children, but also the emotional and social growth. You educators, everyone in the classrooms and schools, are entrusted to take care of our children. You see them more than I do during the weekdays. I hope that you would take care of them. I also trust that a decision about our schools will be made on a well-researched options with the pros and the cons, including the unintended consequences, such as losing young families in our small towns. All of this information must be made easily and readily available to the public. At this point, I still don't totally understand why this option is even being considered. I have no idea what the budget is like. Are we running out of money? Have other options been considered? What has been considered and tried? What went wrong? What are the specific costs and benefits of both keeping the small schools open as well as closing them?
Thank you.
We need this comparison.
Seeing no one else, we'll close the public section. Consent agenda.
Okay, in your packets, you have a nomination for James Cluck, who will be teaching PE and health education for our ConVal elementary schools.
Will we accept the nomination of James Clark?
Been moved and seconded to accept the nomination of Mr. Club. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, time for reports. Yes,
So,
introduce yourself so everybody
oh,
knows.
yeah, okay, I'm Molly Janik, and I'm Marina McMahon. Okay, so, we're reporting on what's been happening at ConVal High School recently. So, ConVal Interact just finished their annual food drive, so that'll be exciting to see how that went. NHS is starting a clothing drive. They kicked it off last Friday with an assembly, which consisted of a bunch of students playing a game called Head, Shoulders, Knees, and Toes, and we got some teachers involved, so that was pretty fun. And then, as Ms. Saunders said, Vincent Weiss came to our school, which is pretty exciting for not only the German students, but everyone. So, yeah, that was pretty cool. And that's all.
Okay, thank you. Maria, you gonna say anything? Or you-
She covered it.
Okay, good. Teacher representative, Asher? Here? Okay, Maria.
Tomorrow evening is the high school holiday concert. The AES staff is working on their school version of the 12 Days of Christmas. It will be performed this Friday at their holiday concert. The CVAA received a grant to help pay for their messaging and ways to help build communication with the community. Temple Elementary staff got together and did a door decorating contest. Please stop by the school and see their creative displays. Thank you.
Thank you, Asher. Budget and property, Jim?
So we started off the meeting with a really brief discussion on the potential solar project. There were a number of opinions from the public, and we agreed that we had not taken action on the action item, and we're going to schedule a meeting with those people and a few others to try to move it forward and set what we're going to do. Spent most of the time talking about the version 4 of the budget and how the default budget was arrived at, and he walked us through that. I'm not going to go through that in detail in this discussion right now, but we're going to spend a lot of time on it later. The other thing I want to report to is, looks like now we have pretty much the final numbers in the high school science lab project. We came in about $1,025,000 versus $1,670,000, so the savings is $645,000, which is significant. What it really means, though, is if you look at the capital reserve fund, we are going to end up, after we get the money transferred in that was voted on last March, we'll get about $1.3 million at the end of this year. So that gives us options when we discuss the budget later. We got to go over in detail.
Thank you, Jim. Communications committee, Janine, are you going to do that one?
Yeah. Jim, thank you very much. He finished his edits to parts 1 to 3 for the discussion of your tax bill. So you'll have that information available to you. Very soon it'll be on the website. We decided to add parts 4 and 5 on the default budget and development of the current budget. So that'll provide more information about how the budget is developed, and it will be on the website. And in preparation for the March, the deliberative session and then the March voting on the budget, we will have a pamphlet prepared that will be mailed to everyone. And we will have pamphlets available and hopefully in the town offices and the libraries in every town, well, all of our communities, 9 communities. And then we talked about, Kimberly, if you would be so kind, I don't think we got this far, but if a small group is going to meet with you to develop the information about that default budget.
Yeah.
And we talked about the need to highlight some of the major accomplishments that are going on in our school district. And both the Monadnock Ledger transcript and the Villager and Andrew were doing a pretty good job of doing that, because there are a lot of exciting things going on in our school district. We talked about how we're going to present the warrant articles in the deliberative session. And then we actually did talk about the state funding problem for the schools to be, and the need to keep it in the public eye. So this has been a big point of discussion with the board, as well as our select groups. Your select boards are also very interested in making sure that the new legislature that we have keeps this issue front and center, because that is one of our big problems, is the state funding.
Okay, thank you. Stefan, ATC?
ATC discussed the state report on the ATC and the continued forward motion on the aspects of that report, which I think is working quite well. Things are being addressed in an appropriate manner, and we're able to make the adjustments, I think, in the near future that will meet all the requirements. Additionally, we're very pleased to hear that the rollout of Nashua Community College, having courses here at the high school, will be effective this January, with some limited courses initially. We hope the community supports those courses and the additional courses. To have kids driving over the hill to go to school is not always the best thing, and having a local campus that would provide them with college courses at the high school while they're in the high school, as well as after high school, as well as benefit the community members and our adults, is something I very much value, and I am very proud to say our administration supports and has been, Kimberly's been a great cause of this action that's occurred. Thank you, Kimberly.
And Michelle Bodo, the new
Of course,
high school
Michelle,
principal.
my apology on that. I'm not ignoring anybody.
Wouldn't do anything without you and Kimberly.
So anyway, I really thank those folks for all their efforts and look forward to the success of the program.
Thank you, Stefan. Krista, Education Committee.
We had an update on the multi-age going on at DCS. Some of the positives have been, maybe step back from it. The grades that are in that collaboration are 3, 4, and 5. So they've been doing it for about 3.5 months. Some of the positives that we talked about were collaboration, co-parenting, it's kind of like that too. Co-planning between the teachers, curriculum, being able to work, each staff is able to educate the children in what they're maybe strong at. So Nicole is doing math and science, and the other staff member is doing literacy and social studies. So they're able to spend more time on those particular curriculums and not have to go to all the PD days that all the elementary school teachers have to necessarily go to. So that frees up a little bit of their time. The cons were restrictions with time and planning time around specials such as PE, art, library. So that has been a little bit problematic that they're working through. They need more flexibility, more time to even have more planning time together because they're only being able to meet once a week. So that was something that was that update. We then had an update looking at what inclusion looks like in the ConVal School District. We have about 60% participation, or that we cover inclusion, and we actually brought up, what does that necessarily look like? And is that always the best thing for each child? So we're gonna dive into that a little bit more. Those let's get our fingers wet a little bit with that one. And then we had an update with the social emotional and the elementary school levels as well. A little bit of some positives and some negatives. Again, it's around planning and timing. That is a new way of getting the students in the elementary schools ready to learn. And we found out that only 25% of elementary school students come to school ready to learn. They have lots of other baggage and lots of other stuff going on in their lives that they're coming to school for, and they're not ready to learn. So they're working on, there's 4 colors, there's red, yellow, green, and I don't know what the 4th color was. Blue, thank you everyone. So we want the kids to be in green all the time. So when they're in yellow, they're working on what steps they can work to get out of the red and into the green. And they're doing morning meetings and then afternoon meetings, like a closure meeting. And so they're working, there's some pilot groups that are doing that, and we're looking forward to seeing how well that goes. It seems really exciting. I think it'll be great for the little kids and for the teachers for that matter. And then we reviewed the director of school counseling, and we had some concerns and some questions, so that's going to come back to us once we hear what exactly her days are going to encompass and what she already covers. We were a little concerned about overloading her with more than what she already does, because the high school does require a lot of her time. And we don't want to take away from those students at the high school because they do need that. But we also know that the counseling outside of the elementary schools and the middle schools, they also need that support as well. That's where
Are
we're
there
at.
any questions of Kristen, since she gave us an extensive report?
I'm sorry, can I speak to
Linda?
you all?
Yeah, you said 60% of our students are included, or all students are included 60% of the time, or I don't understand what that 60% represents.
Yeah.
In the strategic plan, the evaluation measure says that 60% of our schools are implementing the co-teaching model, so that's where that number came from. So in some of our schools, it could be that there's just one co-teaching situation going on. But that's where the 60%
What's our last measure as far as, I know the state comes in and does a evaluation, does he know? Or should I wait for Carrie or Ben to be
Ben's-
here?
Ben, I know Ben is here. Where is
I'm
Ben?
here.
Oh, Ben, could you, because I know they just came out, do you know it off the top of your head, or?
I don't.
look? Can I get back to you, because we have it, we just got it, but I don't, neither one of us knows that off the top of our head.
Okay.
Ours is higher than.
Oh,
a
I'm
national
sure it is.
state
That
average.
60% just seemed really low to me.
The first part about, you talked about the director of school counseling, what was the conversation? What are you talking about? Where are you going?
Do you want to elaborate on this? Or do you want me to? So is it Carrie here?
Carrie's here.
Is she here?
Carrie's in the back hall. Carrie, you want to stand up? Oh, wait, you're standing?
A little early for that.
What was proposed last night is a change in the job description. Currently, the Director of School Counseling job description covers grades 9 through 12. And what we're proposing is that the Director of School Counseling position become a district position, and it cover grades K through 12, primarily in an effort to provide consistency in regard to delivery of service all the way up through. Currently, it's cut off. The other piece of that, which invited a lot of discussion, was in regard to the Director of School Counseling having input into staff evaluation for the counselors, so that they were getting evaluated consistently, they were getting provided resources and support consistently, and provided more support from the people that understand what kinds of jobs they're doing in the schools.
So who do the count? So if just the high school has the director of school counseling, who are school counselors who's supervising the K through 12, or the K through?
8 principals currently.
I have one piece to that. In the job description, it breaks out district responsibilities and then high school specific responsibilities. When you look into the district responsibilities, most of the bullets there, Kim Chandler, who's in the director of school counseling at high school now, already does all of those things. So she already facilitates the monthly meetings. So the added piece, as Carrie was talking about, was having her spend some time in the other schools, working with the school counselors and providing support for evaluations.
Can I have one more question?
Okay, go ahead.
Initially, when you talked about that new social emotional program with elementary schools, you were talking about possibly extending it to the middle school. I know it's still early at this point. Is that still going to be happening?
PBIS is being implemented in the middle
Right.
schools.
Well, this is sort of.
But we're still in the piloting stages of the elementary school. So I don't even think they, besides updating the PBIS for the middle schools, I don't think that has, we have to, like, they're doing one step. My understanding is one step at a time.
Just want to keep it on the radar.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I don't want to lose that.
When we're actively looking at what we call tier 1, so what we provide all students at every level related to social emotional.
I think it's important to clarify that 25% of students coming to school not ready, only 25% ready. That was not a ConVal figure, that was a national figure that was provided by us. So just to make sure people understand, there's a big difference when you look at the national figure. That's pretty dramatic. 25% of your kids are coming to school ready to learn, and the rest aren't, and that's pretty shocking to us. I think it's a significant number to look at, but I just don't want the audience to think that was reflective of ConVal, because that's really not what they're doing.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to Bowles business, starting with the update of the operating budget.
Okay,
Did
you
you want to
have
do the
packet.
selection? Did you want to do the selection advisory meeting? Or was that
They
no?
didn't have a meeting.
You didn't?
Oh, that's
Alright.
Yeah, not since the last meeting. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So you have a packet with some budget information, and the first topic to look at is you have version 4 in front of you. And that reflects some changes. And what we did was we decreased this budget that you last saw the budget from. We decreased it by taking out high school renovations for $33,000 and high school hallway flooring and ceiling for $189,629. Because you can discuss how you want to fund those later on when we talk about default budget and warrant articles. But we decreased the budget so that those items would come out from the capital projects that are in the operating portion. And then we also added in 2 paras for GES and PPS. And salary and benefits, that's another $106,740 of the initial budget. So those are the decreases and additions that changed for version 4. So you have the new proposed budget for 1920, gives you the full, the amount of the new operational budget as compared.
Let's return it to you to ask the question. Okay. Go ahead, Mitch.
Okay. So as compared to the 18-19 approved budget, there's an increase of $840,608. So the operating budget is up by 1.87% in our operating budget. So you will see those reflections. The page that shows the changes and additions, there's also one consideration on there. The DCS boiler for $120,000 is still in the budget right now, but in budget and property, we did talk about possibly taking that out of the budget, but it's in there now. And again, that can come up with discussions on the warrant articles, because that was discussed to possibly have that as a separate warrant, but we'll come back to that when we talk about the warrant articles. But version 4 is in front of you now, so you can see the reflective changes. So there's 2 documents. One shows the proposed compared to the approved document and the changes. And then in your packet, you also have the default budget, but that's later in the agenda.
Yeah, we're going to discuss the default budget.
You have a question?
Yes,
Okay,
the
good.
question I had was, so in the 400 series, there's a number of capital items that you just pulled, some of which you pulled out. But are there other capital items that could have, now that we have a $1.3 million balance in our capital reserve fund, are there other projects in the operating budget that could be put into capital, drawing on capital reserve rather than not in operating expense?
There are other projects in there. There's flooring projects. There's the boiler still in there, but that was up for discussion.
I mean, one reason that would help us, would help the 4.8% net assessment, which everyone's going to pay for out of the budget. We already have the money essentially in the capital reserve, so that's my question. That's my purpose of asking the question is maybe we should look as to other projects that are capital that are qualified for capital reserve.
We'll do that when we get to
Yes.
that. Okay. Any other questions? Jim?
Last night, when you non-public.
Yes, ma'am.
So these changes to the capital plan, capital plan are only in this year. So we have $1.8 million scheduled in capital projects for next year. And those have not changed.
Those have not changed. But obviously, anytime we push, and that's going to have to be part of our conversation regarding default. Anytime we push, then we end up pushing things out. The couple of things, we had an extensive conversation with Tim Grassi couple of things that didn't come out. The GBS parking lot, for instance. The HVAC systems, the doors at SMS and the SAU, the things that didn't come out, there was a very strong feeling that they were absolutely necessary. So just to give you an idea, the parking lot at GBS, could you take that and put that as a warrant article? You absolutely could do that. Understand that if you make that a warrant article, no means no, and that means you can't even do it with the trust money. You couldn't even decide to make a decision to do that with the trust. The other one was SMS and the SAU, the doors. We put those doors off over significant amounts of time. I'm not sure if you remember, just recently this door actually flew open and we had to bolt it shut over here. So there's security concerns regarding the doors. That's about $42,000. Again, you could absolutely take that out. And finally, the HVAC at PES, we're certainly in a situation where that absolutely it really needs to get done. Could we put it off? Yes, of course we could. And then I know that there's questions about the boiler at DCS and should we make that a warrant? If we make that a warrant, again, no means no. The big piece with the boiler is that should the boiler break down, we would need to, particularly in the winter, we would need to close the school for up to 3 weeks in order to, so it's a really, that's not a warrant, that's not a no means no situation. We really need to do it, we need to do it this summer. So I hope that answers your question, Pierce.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting any warrants, actually. I was
Okay.
suggesting utilizing the money we already have in capital reserve for some
Yeah,
projects.
that's
that are
definitely-
involved with that. So I wouldn't actually push us towards this warrant. I rarely use warrants for capital items unless they were big, so that everybody had a chance to vote on something like a big parking lot. But for boilers, tractors, and it's not necessary that it go to the warrant, which I think would be a big mistake. Doubling space because then you have to scurry, if it was no, for how to figure out how to keep a building warm, people don't know what fails.
Question that I've heard some reason, why is the DCS boiler $120,000?
Well, actually, that is not an atypical cost for a boiler. But I mean, the boiler is, I want to say the boiler is pushing 32 years old. So.
I heard something about access to the pump.
Well, the way, yeah, I mean, it's, it's an older building and where the boiler is in the building is an older, so it's more difficult to access. But, I mean, it's no more difficult to access than the high school boiler was 4 years ago. Was it 4 years ago the high school boiler was replaced? And so that was at $250,000.
Thank you.
Are we at the point where we have asked about mine? So, line 211 is health insurance. That's to reflect the full 4.0% GMR instead of.
Are you done with the default now? Or
No,
in the proposed, it's 2.2?
Okay.
That didn't change, the board wanted to stay at 2.2.
Right, okay.
We increased the default budget to help us with that,
Okay.
to be honest.
Right. The other, there was also a question in budget property about line 738. Is the replacement equipment, $130,000 line. And you explained to us how the $100,000 is a one-time expense came out, but do we know what's in that?
In 738, it's all replacement equipment, students and staff, there's replacement Chromebook projectors, there's a whole lot of replacement in GBS, desktops in GBS, high school has laptops, there's various equipment that's in line with the technology plan.
Okay, so 738 is a technology equipment line?
She has also science equipment, microscopes, anything that falls under
the object code of 738, there could be some athletic equipment in those lines as well. So that's all the objects for 738 and the replacement equipment through the district.
Question about the budget line, another line. On line, software support 650 has a almost 16% increase in software support. What's the driver for that amount of, that's a fairly big increase over a year?
We have some recurring, we've got software licensing, software assurances that have a 3-year term, and they're due for renewal again.
So over 3 years, we've had a 15% increase.
No, we do a 3-year, we don't pay for 3 years.
Right.
So
it's 15%, but it's over 3 years.
And generally, most of our enterprise software that we use, we see about a 5% increase every year. This past year, there was quite a few that weren't accounted for because we never really did it. It was picked up with other areas, but that's where that comes from.
Any other questions on the version 4? Here's
So our buses now don't use diesel. What is, I know that the diesel number has gone down over time, but what exactly, what is the gas diesel used for again? What's that number, what are we powering that with? I thought the buses were.
Propane?
Propane, so it's propane.
But we also have gasoline, but we also fuel oil.
So, okay, so just curious with the diesel, so it is diesel or is it?
So what would be, what line specifically are
I'm
you
sorry,
looking at?
656 says gasoline diesel. That's
I don't have the detail, but I believe that was a gallon, whatever it was, a gallon that Team Grassley got the quote for, and then I don't have the details of that market, that's really.
some of it is the tractors, they are diesel, too, the ones that they're going to put.
It's not tractors.
Yeah.
I was curious.
It's also gasoline, right? It's a food service van. Food service vans are in that line.
There's food service vans. And even though we have a contract with the bus company, we still pay for it.
Right.
Further questions?
Maybe for clarity in line, 656, we put gasoline, diesel / propane. That's all figured within that line. Sometimes it can be confusing, so you put that in.
The descriptions are not up to date.
Yeah, it might be a good idea to break them out so we know what they are.
Also.
So it should be relabeled, or you have a bottled gas line, propane, right?
But I don't think that that's the propane, all the propane for the buses.
I know it can't possibly be figured
Right.
out, but
So
maybe
we
that
can
should.
redo the descriptors.
Anything else?
I said I couldn't hear Rich. Did you say we have 1.8 million in capital spending essentially over this term of the budget?
No, next year.
Next year's capital.
Well, this is the next year. Just to be clear, this is 1920.
Not in this budget.
Following year.
Not in this budget, the following budget. So I count about $800,000 in the 400 section, most of which is capital, some is service. And then the capital plan that we have online mentions about $1 million, somewhere in that range, for the year 19.
I have to pull
So
up.
it doesn't split it according to like the school June stuff. But
As you're aware, most of the smaller elementary schools are now over 20 years old and we're starting to replace boilers, roofs, and various parts of the different buildings.
I'm actually aware of that. I'm actually aware that the spending in that period is not for that. It's actually going mostly as Kenny mentioned to GBS stuff, SNS for regional locations. But yes, I do know buildings cost.
My point on the $1.8 million, I guess, okay, it's 2 years.
Yeah.
I assume, is that it is substantially more. It's a peak like this, and when we're talking about whether we should be spending down our capital reserve account, we need to keep in mind that in the year after this, we have an anticipated large peak in our capital reserve.
Right.
Jim, just a general comment, when we had the budget meeting, I don't remember, the capital improvement plan included $769,000, and Mindy was taking out 189 and 33, the balance in version 4 of the capital improvement
projects is $550,000 in round numbers. That's what's left right now. We could take out an additional 120 if we decide we're going to double the boiler if we decide we're going to use trust money instead of the budget. But right now, at version 4, we're sitting at about $550,000 for capital improvements next year, all schools.
Oh, sorry, you say 550 is what we're spending?
550 is what's in version 4. If you,
Yeah.
you know, I'm talking about the capital improvement plan budget.
Yeah.
The balance right now in version 4 is 550. There's only a couple lines that came out of that, so if you want to reference that, they will help you.
Any further questions on the budget? We'll be discussing the default budget in non-public. Okay. Next item in old business is proposed warrant article for consolidation. Stafford?
Mr. Chairman, it's kind of useful that I read that letter I read to you the other day that I drafted and sent out to the board. You can know about the response to the taxpayer.
The warrant articles are in here.
As their reception.
I don't see it quite exactly, but I can't work it. There it is, found it. Thank you. The letter, you know what letter I'm talking about in response to?
Yeah.
Would that be inappropriate or something I could do?
You could do that. I would not mention the name.
Yes, that's why I didn't say it. Okay. We have a lot of taxpayers here and a lot of concerns, so I just want to read what I responded to one. Okay. Received your letter. Thank you for your concern. I would like to invite you to attend our school board meetings and our subcommittee meetings where a lot more business is transacted. They are open to the public, and it's in these meetings that you realize the problems we're dealing with. There's much more going on than meets the eye, not just the declining student enrollment. Depending who you talk to, this can be viewed as a budget matter and/or an equity and education matter. Years ago, small schools were common. Teachers could focus on the kids, and the modern world was slower. I wish we had those days. Today's kids have much more to deal with, and the pace of change is not slowing, but continuing to accelerate. Today's schools are mandated to meet extensive standards by both federal and state law, and we have to prove to these agencies that we're not only meeting these standards, but that the kids are meeting the educational standards as well. Add to this the requirements by law that we have to meet for any special needs that students may have, then you truly find out why our costs are what they are. Add to the fact that the government keeps cutting educational funding to pay for school, but does not cut requirements, only keeps adding, and that puts all of our small schools in the crosshairs. Our state defines adequate school funding as $36.36 per student, $3,636. Actual costs across the state are in the $15,000 to $20,000 range, when regular education requirements, special ed requirements, and transportation are totaled. This low adequacy number has a great impact on our local taxes, and we're working on this issue as well. As our local budget, some towns in the as to our local budget, some towns in the district have elementary costs without transportation of under 10 grand per student, while small schools have actual costs around 18,000 per student. This causes great upset in some towns, and the current funding formula leaves the larger towns feeling that they're subsidizing the smaller, while they have class sizes of 20-plus kids, and the small schools have often class sizes of around 10 kids. Add to that the requirements such as a school nurse in each school, and the many standards we are mandated by law to meet, and that's what makes our small schools so expensive. I like small schools. I wish our towns could keep all their small schools, even down to the one-room schoolhouse of old. But that vision is unlikely in the future. Those schools of yesteryear did not have the stacks of mandated standards that the public schools have to meet today. I would have to discuss the positive possibilities of what the options are. It's not all bad. Whatever happens, it should be the kids that come first. I truly believe answers can be found that will benefit our kids, provide excellent education, and keep costs in check. That was a letter I responded to a concerned taxpayer earlier. The actual warrant article was slightly modified. There will be two presented tonight, which I would very much like to see the other one go. But this is the one I'm presenting. The Kentucky Valley School District, ConVal, shall be responsible for grades 1 through 12 and kindergartens. Kindergartens were previously authorized by a vote at an annual cooperative school district meeting. Grades 9 through 12 shall be educated in centrally located senior high school in Peterborough. Grades 5 through 8 may be educated at the middle schools in Antrim and Peterborough. Effective July 1st, 2020, elementary schools shall be maintained in Antrim, Bennington, Francistown, Greenfield, Hancock, and Peterborough. As school populations change, students from the middle schools may be reassigned to the elementary school locations. Such reassignment needs will be determined by the ConVal administration, but each location change would have to be approved by the school board. This change would result in the closure, resulting in the closure of elementary schools in Dublin. I would ask for a vote on this tonight.
That's a motion.
That is.
A motion to submit as a warrant article on behalf of the school board?
Yes, please.
Do I have a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded. So now we can have a vote on that for further discussion. Any further discussion? Pierce?
I guess I would just say that, so we started this discussion years ago, and in earnest, probably 6 months ago, when strategic planning continued to have a conversation about what this would take form in. And our strategic plan has a goal for bringing forward a consolidation plan, one which our hope was to have a unified board to bring forward a plan that would essentially be go from concept to implementation. So a lot of the questions that were asked tonight, bus time, things of that nature, were all discussed in committee. And that information is important for you as a taxpayer and a parent and person and a student to know how long you're going to take the bus, or how much it's going to cost, how much we're going to save. We didn't have really the time and resources to fully do that. And I think in some ways we've kind of wandered over the last 3 months with respect to why we've kind of moved to do what we're doing tonight. But that was not the original intention. It was written in the plan 3 years ago, 2 years ago. And I know that there's a lot of sense on some members of this board who would like to move this forward to do something for the warrant. However, I think this is going to be hard to defend. Whatever we do, we'll be asked those questions again and again. And frankly, I don't know the answers to those questions, and I'm not sure we do. So we're putting ourselves in a position of defending a consolidation plan without the information that we've discussed ad nauseum of having before making this decision. So my sense on moving forward with this is that it's premature. Unfortunately, I was first in line to say I was advocating this, bringing this forward, putting something on the warrant that we would be able to get behind, and did not do that. So my first feeling is that this is going to be premature, and we're going to face a lot of scrutiny of what we're doing.
Great. Anyone else? Sir?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to repeat what I said 2 board meetings ago. I think it's not a good plan. I think first of all, it's dividing the school district. It's not based on any of the planning, as Pierre said, that we've done for many years in the strategic planning committee. It seems to single out a couple of schools, the one that I represent or the one from the town that I represent. But I would say the same thing if it was Greenfield or Francistown. I don't think it's good to single out individual schools. I think I also would fear that we would see other warrant articles on the ballot that would, in turn, use the same wording in closing other elementary schools. I don't know. I would very much hear Janine's proposal and would wait with the vote on this one until we've heard that one.
Anyone else wish to speak?
I just want to support what was said, that I think choosing 2 towns based on the lowest numbers, and I know it has history, we're looking at over a few years which towns were lower. I think you also need to understand that there were some schools who actually ran at lower cost. They actually ran with fewer teachers. They ran with a teaching principal model, which actually was a little more cost effective, knowing that we in fact were shrinking and needed to do that. I don't think any of that has ever been considered, and I would like that to be considered before 2 towns were just eliminated from the Articles of Agreement, which in fact, when we began, all the towns bought in based on the fact their elementary schools would stay in their town. And I think I don't have any problem with people looking at, now we need to look at a different ConVal. We probably do need to look at a different ConVal cost of change. When I started in Temple Elementary School as a teaching principal, and I can't tell you the year because I don't remember years very well, but I will tell you that there were about 55 kids. When I left Temple Elementary School 2 years ago, there was about 55 kids. What happened in between, we actually lost teachers at Temple because when I started, there were 3 teachers, we lost grades. 3 teachers, 6 grades. When I left, there were 3 teachers, me included, the teaching principal being a teacher. And so it was the same number of teachers, and there were 5 grades if you consider kindergarten. So in some ways, it was equal. The difference is we had a nurse attend our school once every 2 weeks. She came and ran through paperwork. We did not have a secretary. The students answered the phone. I did not have a para in my classroom at first, and then we did, and the para became kind of the whole school secretary and everything. But the mandates that have caused, we didn't have hot lunch when I started. Children bought lunch from home, so you didn't have that deficit. You didn't have that loss. But what happened over time was what the state has required the schools to offer in order to stay equal has added just an incredible burden to the small schools, to the whole district, not just the small schools. And in any year, we could take any school building and find some that cost more than others. But we are ConVal. We need to remain ConVal. And that means that if my school costs you a little more, because I have fewer kids this year, you know what? Somebody else may have 60 kids that need something that my kids don't need, and they're costing more. But you know what? We all pay. We're being fair. We're part of a district. We have to pay our fair share. We're all educating 2,100 kids. We're not educating 50 kids in Temple, and somebody else is educating 200. So I just wanted to remind people, we are ConVal. Temple has stayed ConVal. Steve and Nikki chose ConVal for their kids because it's a great district full of lots of towns and the fabric of the communities makes this one of the most unique, wonderful districts in the state. Don't lose it. Don't lose it.
I'd like to make just my own personal comment. I feel too, like Pierce said, that this particular warrant article is a little premature. Maybe motivated by the need to do something. Those of you that know me know I'm a numbers guy. I don't see numbers, so I don't know that I can support this warrant article without the numbers.
Anyone else? Seeing none, it was suggested that we vote on this after we consider the other article, and I will do that so everyone has an opportunity to see both. So, Janine, do you want to?
Sure.
First of all, I'd like to say that, Stefan, your letter, your response was right on, and I agree with everything you said. It really presented the problems that we're facing very well. Nikki, your feelings are totally accepted. Bert, same with you. I hope you're starting to understand the dimensions of the problem we're facing. The reality is we're asking the administration to stretch thinner and thinner across all of the schools, as wonderful as they are. The administration and the teachers are doing a yeoman's job in meeting those responsibilities. The state funding has shrunk to historical low levels despite the court, two lawsuits actually. And we're doing what we can, but I would recommend to you that a lot of this lies on you too as constituents in this state to answer to your legislators about what it is you intend. So the warrant article I proposed was to change the wording in the articles that says shall for having an elementary school in every town to may, and then allocating an amount of money in our proposed budget for the following school year so that we can come up with some of the specifics that we don't have. The data that people are referring to about what would the effect be on towns and real estate values, what would the effect be on the types of education that would we lose all the wonderful things that you as parents are bringing up, that closeness, that personalness, that ability to give one-to-one instruction and support. Would our programs suffer? And then the numbers that Jim is talking about, like exactly what are the numbers that we would save? If we get some solid data, it could make a difference. Pierce referred to the fact that we've been struggling, actually, before I came, there's been a struggle to try to figure out like what the ConVal school district should look like. And I think that we do need to like take a little more time, but we can't ask the administration to take that on. They're already struggling with too much work. So we need to allocate money, identify a consultant, and work with that consultant to actually give us the specifics that the parents want and that we need as a board in order to make a decision, and you need as voters to make a decision. So I am proposing that we put consolidation back on the table, but we put it back on the table with money allocated to do the study that we need in order to get the information that we need so that we can all move forward together, Nikki, and to be ConVal together.
So you want to move your word?
Yeah, the article that I wrote though is on the shall and the may, and I've been advised to take that out and to go forward as simply consolidation. So I'm not sure how to do that. I have to rewrite this.
Well, we can discuss the attributes of it, but I would suggest to you that $25,000 is probably low in the amount of hiring consultants to do the work with on this now.
Okay.
And I would ask the
I would agree that it's a bit low, but I can certainly put out some feelers to find out what we get, maybe a more accurate or a more solid number. 25,000, I think is what.
Can I just make a clarification for the audience in case the may? Do you want to clarify what the implication of may is?
Oh, okay. So in the article says that as you can look, as Stefan read, it says there shall be an elementary school in each of the 8 communities, except for Sharon. And then it says there'll be 2 middle schools, and we can move elementary students from the middle schools down to the elementary schools, but we can't close elementary schools because it's shall and not may. So I'd like to change, I was proposing that we change that word from shall to may, because if it says may, then that gives us the ability to go through the study and put information before the public and the board and make a better decision.
So I want to make that slightly clearer. So isn't that giving the authority to close schools to the board?
Right.
As opposed to a public vote? A vote of public, a vote of the district?
Yes.
Correct?
It would give the board the ability to move on the information as opposed to having to put it back on a warrant article.
Two things I feel. We can address we can just do up to an amount as far as we've always tried to minimize expenditures, including this consultancy. I'm sure we tried to get the best possible quote we could. Is there a number that we could adjust this at this meeting? Because we are trying to stretch in order to put this article into.
I would only guess, give me your number, up to 50,000.
Is there a safe?
No, up to 50,000.
That would cover it. What do you think, Rich?
Rich has a better idea. I'd say it's 75.
All right, well, let's put it up to.
We spent 15 with the last consultant, where we started 2.5 years ago with the strategic planning committee for a much more limited scope of work. The public survey and the focus groups. So, and that cost us $15,000. So to do the
up
work
to
Dean's talking
75,000.
about, it's going to take at least $75,000.
At least.
So we can amend that to up to 75,000.
I guess my other question is, are you proposing to put that sum of money on the warrant as an article?
No.
Or are you proposing
No.
to add it to the current budget?
In the current budget.
Okay.
I just wondered if it would be possible to create just a warrant article just about hiring a consultant to do that story research, as opposed to getting the articles of agreement involved and what
that would leave us basically where we are now, with no plan to move forward in anything. So I'm proposing basically what Stefan is proposing, but I'm moving us back to consolidation. So we have a plan for consolidation before the voters. So we propose that we go to 2 elementary schools, pre-K to 2, I think it was, pre-K to 2? Pre-K to 3. Pre-K to 3, 2 middle schools, 4 to 6, 7 through 12 in the high schools. In the high school, 1 high school. So it would basically be 5 schools, 2 to it.
When the consolidation plan was originally put forward, right, we were going to have a research process to answer a lot of these questions. There was a even started putting together public committees to answer these questions. And we didn't do that.
Right.
Right? So we stopped doing that.
Yes.
Now we're 4 months later.
Right.
And that much closer to voting time. And I just want to point out one particular huge question that a lot of people have had and asked me about that we haven't seen a word on yet, which is my kid in 6th grade, what's 7th grade look like?
Right.
We haven't talked about that piece at all. And now we're 3 months from it. So I almost take the opposite approach that you're heading in. I mean, I sort of get the idea that as a result of research, you've got to be able to close elementary school. If you're going to put something on the warrant that send 7th and 8th graders to the high school, I think we don't have any information about what that looks like. That's my concern there.
I wish there was something in between.
Stefan? I want to remind you, no matter what plan we put forth, what warrant article we put forth, 2 things can happen. And one of the reasons I put my warrant article forth is the public also can do warrant articles. And those can say anything. That said, I'm trying to give enough time in my warrant article reads 2020, that if there is, if the public votes in favor of the article, then we have enough time to look at other alternatives still. If the public votes in favor of the article, then we know what our marching orders are, and we can still look at other alternatives. I'm not saying it's a palatable one, but financially, we're being forced in that corner. We're being forced in that corner by the requirements these schools have to meet. We have large budget items going into all of these small schools in the near future. In the end, it's going to be the taxpayer. It's not this board. Then 60% have to be in favor of any warrant article that's put forth. And if, excuse me, 66, I'm sorry, you're correct, 66%, 2/3. That's why I've generated I mean, I've been here for 5 years, and we've wrestled with this while the funding continues to decline. The demographics of some of these towns continues to deteriorate while other towns continue to grow. Nothing's fixed in stone. Things can change in the road in the future. If these small towns start to grow.
I gotta go with boards here, Burnside.
I think closing only 2 elementary schools is not going to make a difference. I'm certainly with Jim that we don't have any numbers of how much we would save from it, and without those numbers, it's pure action without any plan behind it. Also, if we succeed with this warrant article and the voters approve it for 2 towns, and next year our budget is tight again, then it's going to be the 3rd elementary school, and the next weakest one, or the next perceived weakest one, and the year after it's going to be the next elementary school, and it's going to be a consolidation over 5 or 6 years without having developed a plan for consolidation that we put a lot of energy in. I think the only honest way is to put the consolidation plan, maybe spend the money and develop it further, get the numbers out, but put the consolidation plan in front of the voters and let them decide whether they want ConVal the way it's now, or whether they want a different ConVal in which we can still do a good job educating our kids, but not this strict effect.
Krista, you had a question?
Well, it was a quick statement, or when you mentioned that if yours was to pass, that we could potentially change it, well, we couldn't change it. Because if the voters vote on it and say you're closing those 2 schools, it is what it is. We can't then decide, oh, well, we're gonna take that back and we're gonna do something else instead that might be a better option for the district. You can't backtrack after the voters. It's kind of like no means no and yes means yes. So.
I was.
Hang on a second. I'd like to get, Janine, are you going to move an article?
I propose that we put consolidation, put in our warrant consolidation to the 5-school model by 2021. So that gives us, and then we put the money for the study into the budget, so that gives us the ability to come up with the information for ourselves and the public, so we can inform people about what it is that it will look like, and we know what we're dealing with.
Take it back a little bit, so we can keep everything procedural. Like, you take the next 2 minutes to figure out your exact wording. We have to vote on, we have a motion on the floor.
Yes, we have a motion.
We have to vote on that, but you can certainly vote on that, what your motion is going to be, so that people still have the choice of which of the 2 is fine in there. But as it is right now, we have a vote and a second on the second vote.
They're waiting for a redraft of.
Now, we're gonna let Kimberly discuss the funding formula while we're doing that, since it's another item we've got coming up. Yeah, we'll table these people after the funding formula. Okay, that's all right with everybody.
So, per your request, there is confidential legal advice in your folders regarding the question about funding formula and the surcharge. Just to kind of, lack of a better, oh, sorry. In the red, in your red confidential folders is your confidential legal opinion. So we'll let you get those. I would draw your attention to page 3 of 3. It's getting there. If you could let me know. You could review that. You got that, Pierce? When Pierce is done reading his, then everyone should be caught up.
I'm a slow reader, so.
There you go.
Chairman, while people are doing that, we have people who have been here for previous discussion. Today, I talked about what I see the funding formula issue as. Sure. I have on my computer 2 tax cards. 2 houses in the ConVal School District. Yeah, I have 2 tax cards in front of me. I'm not going to read the addresses because these are actual people's actual houses, but if anyone wants to see it afterwards, it's public information. I have 2 tax cards. Two houses in the ConVal School District. One valued at $267,400. One valued at $271,000. They are on the same road. Middle Road and Hancock / Middle Hancock Road in Peterborough. They are a few hundred yards apart. The one in Peterborough pays ConVal School District $3,337 a year in local education property tax. The one in Peterborough is $4,478. Someone suggested earlier that changing the funding formula, putting in place a surcharge, would divide the community. I submit that the community is divided, that much of a difference between two houses, a couple of hundred yards apart, in the same neighborhood, very similar houses, divides the community. I don't think it's equitable. I don't think it's fair. The idea of a surcharge as opposed to just changing the funding formula was an attempt to be flexible about the fact that that conditions could change. If you change the funding formula, you change things forever. If it's a surcharge based on enrollment, then as enrollments change, things could change. But whether it is by changing the funding formula or by applying some sort of surcharge, as long as we have a pair of very similar houses paying $4,400 and the other one paying $3,300, we have a divide in the community.
Does that take into consideration,
Sorry, can you just repeat which one? I'm assuming one was Hancock, one was Peterborough.
One was Hancock, one was Peterborough.
Okay.
The one in Peterborough
Yep.
pays $1,100 a year more at the ConVal than one in
Okay.
Hancock.
but does that take into consideration the assessment value, like other things you're doing in your town
No.
that raises the assessment?
Local education only. That is what paid to ConVal from these two houses in the ConVal.
So, Rich, you're aware, as the community might be aware, that we spent a significant amount of time on the financial equity question And at the risk of boring everyone with the details, it used to be online, I don't know if it's still on the website anymore, but the business administrator who had been here for 18 years did a fairly exhaustive analysis of what was fair and equitable. Our current funding formula is considered fair and equitable based on other matters, and the other matters that aren't brought up are where the services are delivered as well, and then the unbundled services in that report. You might recall that it comes out differently under an unbundled services model. There are services being delivered around the district in different places. And when we get into this question of subsidies and cross subsidies, it became difficult to really get into that. And I think the bigger point is what you made earlier, maybe about the fact that we are a district together. Whether or not the inequities, what is inequitable and equitable is spelled out pretty clearly in that report. And I would take that overall holistic picture that Marion had put together as, that's where we are. She published that in 2018. Things have not changed that significantly since.
2016 and
2016.
Small school enrollment declined by 10%. So just to be clear, things have changed. I'm sorry.
Well,
I'm sorry.
well, let me retort that. I have 7 million reasons why there are other inequities that have been tried to solve in this district, including we entered into this agreement in 30 years ago, and in the interim, there have been changes in equalized valuation. There have been changes in the adequacy, the amount of adequacy that's come from the state and how it's distributed. And no one is, as a district, we should look at it as a benefit to the entire district. But clearly, there are communities that are getting more of that and of that aid, which has an impact on taxes.
That's the point of it.
Right, but it's a deal that came. It's a piece that came into this deal of a district in the middle. And I'm just saying that there are different equalized valuations, by community. That has an impact. That what we tax each other is not the same across the district currently. Right? That's your point.
I'm saying.
Right.
It's not the same across the district. Nikki said this is one district, and a couple of people in public comment suggested that we're asking the towns to pay more. Actually, all I'm trying to do is narrow this divide. I'm not asking people to pay more per thousand in Dublin or in Hancock or in any other town with the higher assessed valuations. I'm asking them to pay closer to the same amount that's being paid in the If it's one community and it's one school district and we're one ConVal, then why does one ConVal house that's worth $267,000 pay $1,100 more than another ConVal house that is worth $271,000?
And we have one tax rate across the district. And we modify the evaluation so everybody pays the same.
Okay. That would be ideal, but I'm trying to get closer.
So if that is something that's a very different exploration than this administration has ever been asked to pursue before, and if that is the question, is there a way to design a structure that basically equalizes valuation across the 9 towns that is that's going to be outside your articles of agreement. And I would say that we are going to need to get both the DRA and our legal counsel, as well as the select boards, involved in that conversation very, very quickly. Because that is a very, very different way to approach the problem that I think you're trying to solve.
Dick?
I just want to change the topic for a second. Whether we could let our high school students be dismissed. I know it's 8:30 and I know they have school tomorrow. Just thinking about if they want to stay, that's great, but sometimes getting permission to be able to leave maybe sometimes helpful.
I've given them authority to do that when they felt like it's early.
It's an interesting session for a change, right?
I think it's interesting to look at the people are saying if we were one community and we all were in the same town, we would be assessed equally across the board.
is on what Tripp's saying, because some towns have $12 per thousand they pay for education, and other towns pay up to $19 per thousand. So some towns are penalized and some towns aren't, based on the way the formulas are lined. Janine?
Isn't that the problem at the state level, though?
Well, the state's a problem too, but that's a
What we
different
listen
issue.
from one town.
That's the funding issue, not the state. We visited, just so you know, we visited a town in Vermont, evaluating some education systems, and we looked at their budget. This was a town in Vermont. They had a budget of, I believe it was $11,600,000. The town paid $800,000. The state paid the rest of the money for the district. Wouldn't that be nice? We don't have that. Martin?
So, just, you gave us the red folders. What are we're not allowed to discuss this right now?
Well, I would like you to read that last one.
I did.
Because I do think that that's certainly going to non-public to discuss that advice, but I think you guys need to make a decision about if that's something you want me to pursue, or if we're done pursuing that. And you need to direct me if you want me to get a written legal opinion.
I find it difficult to get this information now and then have a mock conversation in front of the public where they only have half the information that's necessary.
Well, this is very similar to the information that I gave you 2 weeks ago. But I need to know.
But what can we discuss now? Could we say, like, in light of this conversation, in light of this information, should we not move forward with
Right, I need to know 2 things. One, do you want me to have our legal counsel prepare a written formal opinion, because that's much different than the conversations that I have.
Draft an article.
Right, and draft the article. Or do you want me to continue, or are we done pursuing this avenue? Because I need to know one way or the other.
Stephanie?
It'd be nice if I could use some general language to describe what's in here, just general. No? Okay.
I would ask the board to please keep in mind that January 8th is really the last day that we have to put together our warrant, and
So we'd have to have a special meeting.
I really need to know whether you want me to do this.
Well, we have.
So
we don't have a motion on
we
that.
can discuss it in non-public, but then I would make a motion not to pursue the funding formula change or anything.
Okay, you have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
All right.
Discussion, clarity. We have 3 motions on this. Technically 2, table them for
Discussion on this one, I just want to pull in what some people said during public comment, right? Why should my student have to go to school with a class of 20? Mine does. Right? Why should the towns with the largest class sizes also pay the highest rate? Because that's what it is right now. We're talking about divide, and I understand these people all feel passionately about this. There's another side to this. Equity is measured in 2 ways. At one level, I don't think it's actually equitable to have kids in very small classrooms. But if you honestly believe that it is, and that that's a better model, then why isn't that model applied everywhere in the district? If 10 students in a classroom is this district's model, then let's have 10 students in a classroom. And I want to see an additional 8 teachers at Peterborough Elementary School and an additional 4 at Antrim. Otherwise, we have to have the equity discussion. Because right now, Peterborough is paying substantially more than Dublin for larger classes. And that's just a fact. Whether you think it's fair or not, it is a fact that that's happening.
I think one public comment was they took their kids out of Peterborough large classes and put it in a small classroom this evening, if I'm not mistaken. Wish everybody could do that.
But I also think we need to remember that in the small schools, in a lot of cases, it's a combined class. So so the number is not 10 students. As a matter of fact, I think in Temple right now, there's 21 students in a class. So it isn't just, every year classes change. There are years when Antrim elementary kids, there are 12 or 13 kids in classrooms. It happens. And we all support that it happens. And the administration has made a decision that it's what's right that year for those kids. We've got to put trust in that.
Go ahead, Mayor, respond. I'm not sure the administration made that determination, because I think the administration is trying to work within a responsible budget, right? I don't know that the administration has made the determination that it's fine that 1 year class size is at this level in one school and this level in another. We've never asked them to make that determination, and we always have asked them to present a responsible budget. I completely get the point that the numbers fluctuate, both the enrollment numbers and especially maybe the special education numbers just fluctuate the way it is. But when it's not fluctuating evenly, it's not a seesaw right now. That seesaw is tilted in one direction for a large number of years. And we need to start looking at it. If people want to keep these very small schools open, they need to accept that they are more expensive per student and that there's going to have to be a funding formula change. I don't see why we can't talk about that. I mean, people keep saying how much they value the schools. Well, you know, put up or shut up. I mean,
Yeah, I'd like to just say that
You know, the only comment I can have, perhaps you can correct me, is that multi-age, you know, multi-class levels have always been put to me are healthy when they are consistently applied on a permanent basis, more so than 1 year doing 1-2, next year doing 3-4, or, you know, bouncing it around like that. And that's what my impression is that that's not the ideal by far. I mean, if you have a fixed plan with that type of scenario, that's a much healthier educational system. We've been doing it based on necessity, and that distresses me because it is not the ideal educational system. Is it harming the kids? I don't know.
Well, we've been using multi-age since before time, sorry.
Here's what.
I think we've had a lot of discussion about demographics and housing and things of that nature. To not understand the history of this area with respect to housing and demographics, there are towns that had mills 100 years ago here that had lots of housing clustered in a small area, and then other towns that didn't have big rivers that drove industry, that drove development. We have communities that are naturally spread out. When this district started, the whole idea was to optimize educational services across a big area, understanding there was areas that were rural. I mean, Temple was never, you know, Antrim. So the idea that there's this big chasm now that somehow has developed. Yes, the enrollments are down. They're down across the district in both big towns and small towns. But the idea here is that really what we're talking about is opportunity cost. We have, at some point, there's not enough, we are, as Janine said, thinning too much. And what could we do with that resource at some point? And I think those are the questions that go into the analysis and into the financial inequities. I'm still trying to square what you're saying against what Marion told us maybe 2 years ago. I understand.
The assumptions in Marion's report, they're right at the beginning.
I understand.
Okay. Go ahead.
However, I think that's an interesting concept to equalize payments based on value, I guess is where you're headed with this. Because that's kind of what you're talking about, is having some kind of value to tax rate equalization.
It's not hard.
No, it's not.
We have a formula in our articles of agreement. We move the formula. I mean, you just move the percentages.
Well,
it's not hard to do.
It's not hard to do. So just to be clear to the audience too, we had that discussion when the small schools were built. We already changed the formula once to pay for those schools. So in essence, I could say I've already paid for that school. I already paid when that
building
came online.
The building, and we've now paid off the bond. I'm sorry. I just want to point, yes, there are differences in the towns and in the demographics of the towns. I don't know why, because there has been a historic inequity, we should perpetuate it in the future. I would love to see as many people as are here tonight at their local planning board meetings saying we need more residential development in our town because we don't have enough kids to maintain our school. And we don't seem to get that.
So just to respond to that, the zoning information that went through was listed in Marion's report. The smallest lot in my town is 40,000 square feet. You can build on that. Okay, so I mean there are opportunities. I think these are interesting observations, and they would be perhaps enlightening in a report, but I don't know how they get us forward at this stage.
How they get us forward at this stage is, just as we've talked about, there might be a petition more on our schools to close individual schools. There is a funding inequity in the perception of many people, including me, and there is an easy way to address it. This is an easy warrant article to write. You say, instead of 50-50, it's 40-60, or it's 30-70. If you think we're not going to get that, we're going to. We have to include funding in the discussion if we're going to keep 8 elementary schools.
My greatest concern here is if we are ConVal, then I would like to look at the vote of the year, and what I would have seen in every community was support of this budget. It doesn't happen. In some cases, it doesn't happen for whatever reasons towns decide to vote the way they do. What I'm worried about is the present budget that we're bringing forward is not going to pass. Because the voters are going to look at it and look at the cost of education and say, I can't afford this anymore. We then turn to what would be a default budget. That would be, from what we've seen so far, pretty devastating. So then we start losing programs. So if we're worried about the quality of education, not having a budget that doesn't pass is going to have a major impact. We do need to do something that will affect the overall cost of operating the school district. This is a personnel issue, because we have assets that drives us, and physical plant issue. Unless those issues can be addressed in a fair, equitable way, the wishes that you have, you won't have, because we'll lose them because we can't afford to run the schools. If you look what's happening in Berlin and what they've had to do there to make decisions around operating their schools, they literally had to start closing their elementary schools. That's my great concern about the cost of running a district this large. I've been in education a long time. I do know that having large classrooms would obviously not be positive. I'm telling you, a classroom of 10 to 15 kids at the lower levels and 20 to 25 in the middle schools are not high classrooms. Matter of fact, if you were to go other places in this country, they would laugh at you and say, how about 33, 35 kids per classroom? We need to address the cost of operating this district, and we need the public support to do that. It is not going to happen if we don't reduce overhead, period. Those of you who are selectmen clearly understand operating budget, you have to reduce operating budget to lower the tax impact. And I'm concerned about what will happen with this budget. And Rich is exactly right. If you think that people don't recognize the difference in funding of schools, you're mistaken. They do, and I hear about it all the time, particularly here in Peterborough, about just what Rich shared with you. That they feel that they're carrying the burden for the small towns, and eventually that causes a separation. And I'd like to see us not do that, and come together to make a decision that's good for kids and the taxpayers.
Stefan?
The concern is well found as to my concern as well, that the budget we're proposing, although as lean as possible on our end, because of further state cuts, is going to further increase the assessments on all towns. And those assessments in some towns are making huge increases in tax bills, while in other towns, it's only been fairly minor. As such, I feel that those towns that are getting these huge increases may keep this budget from being approved. And if we do go to a default, it's going to hurt the kids bad. and this is what I'm scared of. It's not, you know, anywhere close to what a default would have been even 4 or 5 years ago when I first started. My first lovely school board meeting was a budget meeting for a default budget, very first meeting. Fun way to start. I want to avoid that at all costs happening again. Anyway, that's it, what I have. I've made my motion. I would like to see a vote on it, if possible.
I think they,
And I think
have you
Connie
finished
has-
yours, Janine?
Yes, it's basically says the same thing. The ConVal shall be responsible, Kentucky Valley School District should be responsible for grades pre-K through 12 in a 5-school model. So so rather than talking about closing schools, we're talking about looking at a new model for the Kentucky Valley School District. Effective 2021. So giving it another year.
Oop. There'd be no way.
2 years?
I'm sorry.
2 years?
I just had to go, so let me, hold
okay.
on, let me not react twice so. So, I might suggest that you would want a 3 to 5 year phase-in plan.
Okay.
Such a large change to the district.
You say phase in over 5 years?
Okay, what is it, 2025?
And that's,
Be phased in by
2025.
that's because of the preschool element?
Yes.
Pre-K element?
Pre-K students.
Okay. Model of student. All right, do you want me to let you say it?
Yeah, you have to move.
I move that we put a warrant article that the Kentucky Valley School District shall be responsible for grades pre-K through 12 in a 5-school model to be by July 1st, 2025.
Phased in by July 1st.
Phased in by July 21st.
So I just have an order question. If we already have an open, why are we then going?
It was tabled until we heard what Janine's was, and then we're gonna vote on all, and then you'll make.
That way people can make a choice.
They can choose, okay?
Remind you can vote on both, I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you can vote yes.
Or affirmative on both, you don't have to choose one or the
That's
other.
true. Okay, call the question on Stefan's article. Would you again read your article that we're
I
gonna vote on?
most definitely will.
Been moved and seconded.
Prior page, prior page. I thought this was supposed to be a paperless society. The Kentucky Valley School District, ConVal, shall be responsible for grades 1 through 12 and kindergartens. Kindergartens were previously authorized by a vote at the annual cooperative school district meeting. Grades 9 through 12 shall be educated at a centrally located senior high school in Peterborough. Grades 5 through 8 may be educated at the middle schools in Antrim and Peterborough. Effective July 1st, 2020, elementary schools shall be maintained in Antrim, Bennington, Francistown, Greenfield, Hancock, and Peterborough. As school populations change, students from the middle schools may be reassigned to the elementary school location. Such reassignment needs will be determined by the ConVal administration, but each location change would have to be approved by the school board. This change would result in the closure of elementary schools in Tumblin and Tennis.
Okay, it's been moved and it was seconded. Now, two things are gonna happen here. One, this is to put it on the warrant. Some of the things like Jim has mentioned, he wants to know the cost, those can be determined before that time. So we'll have time to do that if you want to. So I'm gonna call for a roll call vote show of hands.
Just a point of clarification. You could vote positively on both of those warrant items.
Yes.
Here.
You don't have to pick one.
Okay, Rich. One vote, we'll go around then.
Oh, boy.
Nay.
Nay.
Could you guys go a little slower? Could you say your name first? I'm sorry. So Rich. I'm writing it down.
Yay.
Cahoon's nay.
Yep.
Yeah, nays all the way down so far.
Jerry?
Jerry, yes. Quintilia's nay.
Yeah.
Nay.
That's a yes.
Krista?
Pierce, no.
Kristen, no.
Vicky, no.
Yes.
Yeah, no. That's, that one doesn't move, which makes it easy for me.
Okay, now we'll do the second one. Janine, do you want to read your motion again?
I propose the Kentucky Valley School District shall be responsible for grades pre-K to 12 in a 5-school model, phased in by July 1st, 2025.
5 schools or 4 schools?
5. 2 elementary pre-K to 3, 2 middle 4 to 6, 1 high school 7 to 12.
Okay, so that here you just like
One
elementary.
So that's not one of the models.
No, that is one of the models. Yeah, it was the second one that came through when.
I thought we had a model that was 2 lower elementaries, an upper elementary, a single.
That was one of the models, but this was.
Okay, I'm just
Yeah.
kind of clarifying. So
That was one of the, I went back through
You're
all the,
saying
all of the reconfiguration and
2
consolidation.
elementary schools, 4 to 6 middle schools, and 7 to 12 high schools. Right. Rich? No.
Amelia, no.
You getting this?
Ben did.
So, can you guys hold on? A roll call vote needs to go into the minutes as roll call and fast. Go for that.
You're voting for Ben.
All right, Rich.
Linda, no.
Ben, yes.
Janine, yes.
Stefan?
Yes.
Kristen?
Kirsten?
Kristen, yes.
Vicky, no.
Yes.
Yes.
Read them back. What you got? Jim was yes. Dick was yes.
Yes.
Nikki was nay. Kristen was yes.
I was yes. Kristen
Pierce
was yes.
was,
Sorry, I'm
Pierce was no. Krista was no. Stefan was yes.
Yes.
Janine was yes. Bert was yes. Linda was no. Rich was no. Jerry was yes. Jim was yes. Kristen was yes. Did I get everyone?
Yeah, I got a couple of people blank.
I know. Yeah.
Chicago.
That's only 12, so everyone's go. You have 8 for it? I have.
You've got Krista's question.
I was no.
Pierce is a no, Krista was no, Linda was no, Rich was no, and Nikki was no. I have 5. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Sure we did roll call.
Yep.
Raise your
Raise your
hand.
hands. Who voted for?
4.
4. All those in favor?
Okay. Who voted against? Okay. You desire to make a motion?
Are we done with that?
Yep, we're done.
I desire to make a motion if, in light of what's in the red folders, we are not considering moving forward with surcharge. So I guess I first want to know if we're voting, if we want to not move
Can you
forward.
get a consensus of that? Who wants to move forward with the surcharge? Please raise your hand.
Want to continue to move forward in
Surcharge.
Generate an article based on what's in that bill.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many did not? Who abstained? Who didn't vote?
Oh my God, God.
6 to 5 is only 11, not one person.
Again, what who's in favor of?
Maybe I didn't count, you know, my education isn't that good. Who voted for?
This is
Please
only
raise your
template.
hand. 6. Okay, who's against it? 6.
Guess
Okay,
what,
I'll have to,
Chairman?
I'll have to vote for, I'll vote for. Wow, I have to do this right time.
First time you've broken a tie in a long time.
So you'll need to let me know then in non-public, so we can proceed with legal.
All right.
Here's my, because we don't know how to play out non-public, I'm making a motion here. Because we don't know how to play out non-public, and we don't know what the final legal advice will be, I also want to make my follow-up motion, which is that we revert to the spreadsheet that Dave Jack prepared for us with a funding formula of 40% ADM, 60% equalized valuation.
I'll second that motion.
Can you repeat it?
I move that we put on the ballot a warrant to change the funding formula to 40% ADM, 60% equalized valuation.
A 10%.
And that, just to be, I'm sorry, I need to rephrase that.
Go ahead.
That was only if we decide not to move forward with this surcharge, not suggesting they both be on the ballot. But if the final legal advice on the surcharge is such that we decide not to move forward in that approach,
Everybody understand the motion? Been moved and seconded. Change the funding formula from current 50/50 to 40% ADM, 60% equalized value. Any questions or
In the
discussion?
event we don't have the other.
In the event we don't do the other.
Here.
Here.
Go ahead.
What's the financial impact?
we have the spreadsheet from Mr. Jack from 2 months ago. I mean, the impact is that towns with higher equalized valuations would.
I know that much.
They would what? They would pay more?
They would pay more with,
With higher equalized valuations, it would be based more on equalized valuation and less on institute expenses.
so should we actually have those numbers in order to be able to make a decision? You don't think that's a
Did you have that?
factor?
That was 2 months ago.
No, we don't have them. That we have old evaluation
Well,
numbers.
we can get them in front of us when we go to non-public, which is where we'll discuss more of this.
Fine, I'll table them after non-public.
Okay? What do we have left on these?
You need a vote to table it,
I'm
though.
sorry.
I'm okay with tabling, but table, I just want to make sure that we're doing it properly.
Yeah.
So
All in
motion to
favor of
table.
tabling until after we get
I'll-
discussion?
All in favor?
All in favor?
So I am looking at the calendar, and looking at the amount of, warrant articles you are proposing. And I need to recommend, as your superintendent, that you do not necessarily have enough time, and you are going to need to have a special meeting. I would suggest that you have that meeting on either the 2nd of January, the 3rd of January, the 4th of January, or the 7th of January, but you absolutely must, we have to have our warrant ready to go by the 8th.
Let's do it on the 3rd, that gives you.
Third. And the reason that is there's another issue that has to be derived after that, on that date.
So 7 PM on the 3rd?
Yep. Okay, now, I'm gonna ask, unless somebody has a disagreement, we've tabled Rich's motion until we have further discussion. Okay, is everybody happy with that? Good. Then let's finish up the agenda items so we can go into non-public. So we have superintendent's report.
Yes. Monthly events calendar.
We just added one.
December, We do have a meeting, our one last meeting this month, and that is the food service committee on the 20th. Besides that, we are looking at January. So I would ask that everyone, we are adding a school board meeting for Thursday the 3rd at 7 p.m. And I would just ask if there's anything we need to add the week of the 7th.
No, we have canceled that, I'm sorry. In favor of we're going to be meeting at the high school, which, what was the title of that? Yeah, Celebration of Learning, which will be quite interesting. We'll be there instead.
Anything else the week of the 7th?
The week, is it legal or you're able to, for that school board on the, you're doing it on the 3rd?
Yes.
Okay. Do you need a snow date for that?
No,
In the event that you have to have it by the 8th?
Nope, I'm gonna come pick you up in my Subaru.
No, I was just curious
No, no, it's
whether or
not.
not you had to, 2 days, you know, and.
Certainly you could.
Okay.
But, no, we're coming here unless, you know, the governor tells you not to. All right, the week of the 13th, the week of the 14th, excuse me. Are we adding anything that week? The week of the 20th. And finally, the week of the 27th. Go ahead.
So I don't know how to phrase it. We're gonna have a subcommittee of the education committee that's meeting at 4 o'clock on the 28th.
Okay.
What's the topic? Policies.
Fun times.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
But it's important if you're going to come, that you get from Krista the policies and then the state board policies. You're just comparing them to make sure that they're consistent and we don't have duplication.
So could they come back to full ed and then?
You think it's confusing now, wait till you read them.
Which policies?
Oh, the affiliation.
So being that it's 9 o'clock, we are asking Dr. Forrest to move her. She will do an extensive presentation on the 7th, I'm sorry, the 8th, on the ESSA designations.
Oh, you're off the hook.
In your folder, there is a sabbatical recommendation. So that recommendation comes to me through the Professional Development Committee. And I am recommending that the board approve that Crystal Moran's sabbatical request.
We move to approve the sabbatical request by Crystal Moore.
The high school. Music.
Okay, it's been moved.
I do have a question. And my question has to do with the line that talks about, it's in making reference to take a sabbatical to move towards a master's degree. And though I understand that, my concern is if we have denied people in the past the opportunity to work on a master's through a sabbatical, are we opening up Pandora's box here?
So that was part of my response initially when the sabbatical request came to my attention. And the Professional Development Committee did take that into consideration. And in the cover letter from Caitlin Currington, you will see that she responds to that in saying they had serious conversation about that and felt that in this case that the information and the way that the program was designed that your attention was on the experience in the activities that she was going to be doing and not on the master's degree. So,
And I hear that. My concern is, does this open the door for this to happen again, having time to a sabbatical, to work on a master's, when in the past we've not allowed that. And so my concern would be, if I was denied in the past, and I had rationale that was similar to this that I need to bring forward, would that not be the same that I would do in the future? And I'm just concerned about when you're working as a sabbatical towards a master's degree, what we open those doors to around. I'm not
So,
opposed to
yeah,
this.
no, and I would-
I'm concerned about the long-term effect when we do that.
so when I would respond that the Professional Development Committee did look at those things, and I think they developed some clear criteria around when they were looking at crystals and thinking about that. So one of the things was that the program was highly competitive. It only accepts 4 students a year. So, and that the program was particularly rigorous and intensive. She would be, they also looked at it as that the master's was actually a byproduct of the experiences that she would have. So she is going to work with internationally renowned choruses and conductors. She has to engage in community partnerships. And so I would say that as long as the committee provided the same level or applied the same criteria to anyone, that would be fine.
I'm not opposed to it. That's not my issue here. My issue is over time that things change. So it's just making sure that there's documentation that's very clear that delineates why this program would accept somebody working on a sabbatical for a master's degree, whereas someone in the future who might do the same thing might be denied. And I'm assuming this is half cake or full year.
That would be the piece. The other thing, of course, that the board could do is send me back to the, rather than to accept or deny it, would be to send it back through me and clarify ask them to clarify the criteria that they would use if another one came.
I don't want to do that. I just want to make sure they do that.
Okay.
We don't have to delay something, but as long as you could bring that criteria back to us so that we know in fact
You want
it's
to
there.
amend the motion to say that the criteria should be
No,
established?
I trust the superintendent will do it.
Any other discussion? Bob?
Mr. Chairman, could you explain why you didn't have a public comment in the latter part of the meeting?
We haven't gotten there yet.
You didn't put it on the agenda.
Not there yet.
It's not down there yet. We moved the agenda items down so we could get to some of these subjects that people were here for, and we haven't gotten to that part of the agenda yet.
I don't think it's on there, but we'll have one.
We'll have one before the end.
So you will.
Yes. You put it on the agenda. It'll be when we get down a little bit further, okay? So, I'll call for a vote to approve the sabbatical. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, approved. Board request.
So just a reminder, we have suddenly in our office been deluged with requests from individual board members. Sometimes those requests are coming in through constituents, we realize that. We do have a mechanism for all of you to send board requests out so that we're not necessarily getting redundant board requests for information. So you all belong to the board requests email. That also allows me to get the board request and send it to the most appropriate SAU employee. Please, please, please don't send individual SAU employees requests. They find it difficult. It makes it difficult for them to prioritize their work, and that's really my role. So could you, as you move forward, could you please avail yourself of that opportunity?
All board requests go through the superintendent. That's the answer to that question.
Okay.
Vern?
Yeah, just to clarify,
So much nicer.
I send it to the board request email and I got bounced back.
Okay, so then
Then I
you're-
send it to you.
Yes, that's
That's
fine.
okay.
Did you hear that, Mr.
Does he have the correct address?
So,
Yeah, no,
You
I
guys
replied to
connect.
board request, and it doesn't go through.
can you connect with those people? If you are having trouble
And I
with
did
board
send it from
requests,
my
please
ConVal
see,
address.
please see Brian before you leave today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
That concludes my report.
Okay, very good. Now we go to new business. Rich?
We have 5 first reads, please let us know if you have any suggestions.
Okay, now we'll have the time for public comment. Anybody who would like to come to the board, they have 2 minutes to do so. Bob, you're up.
Yeah, I was just curious for that. I didn't see it on my agenda, so I apologize, but
Oh, I thought you wanted to talk to us.
I just make a comment that I think there isn't anybody in this room that isn't concerned with their tax bill and where the school district is going with their budgets, and we're all interested, and we're all appreciative for all the work that you're doing. But it has the appearance to me, and maybe some of the others here, that there's a rush to get something on the docket. And as I sit here and listen to the comments, the uncertainty of what those articles mean and everything, it tells me that that process is flawed at this point. And I think what Kristen said made perfect sense. You don't pass something necessarily and then come back with the statistics later. You present the statistics and you make an informed decision. So appreciate everything you're doing, but it has the appearance of rushing through and uncertainty. And I'm always afraid that when that gets to the voters and they hear that, it's going to be a negative response.
Thank you. Anyone else? You have a comment?
Actually, I have a small comment, if I may, Bert.
Sure.
Did I make a comment regarding the something? Constituent had a mail piece regarding school closure, but at the tail end was a query about school bus seatbelts. I've always been in favor of that, once brought that forward, but there is anecdotal data that some people are, some people are very much in favor, some people are not in favor. May I just make one more thing? Can go to address it at a later date, that's what I'm saying.
It's not on the agenda. We'll make the agenda.
Get on that. All right, that's fine, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break and then we're gonna probably go to non-public. So 5 minutes.